All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 at approximately 7:02 p.m. And we'll get the school board meeting going. So, Melissa, would you please do the roll call?
Jason Giard.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
Megan Malcolm.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
And also we have seated at the board table Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Business Administrator Jeff Dowd.
All right. If everybody would please stand for the pledge. Aaron, would you like to start us off?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. So first thing we'll be getting into is the approval of the minutes. So board members, there's one set of meeting minutes from August 24th, 2021, which was a regular meeting. Let's take a minute to review. Then I'll be looking for a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting, August 24th.
Second.
Second from Ms. Parnell. Any discussion? All right, all approve? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next we have public comments. We do have one person signed up, Leah Lavizar. Sorry. It's not as easy as Smith, I apologize. And Leah, just to remind you that the public comments are 3 minutes each. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I would like to advocate that the board reconsider its decision to forego the guidance from New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services in full before more students become infected with COVID-19. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the World Health Organization, New Hampshire Health and Human Services, and UNICEF all recommend universal indoor masking for all students, teachers, and staff. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends universal masking for all teachers and staff regardless of vaccination status. In speaking with Core Pediatrics, our local pediatrician, they are advising to the adherence of the CDC's standard for masking in schools. Since a large portion of students in Hsdsb schools are not eligible for vaccination, universal masking is a preventative measure that can help protect them. Effective infection prevention and control requires the correct and consistent use of well-fitting face masks. Hsdsb schools should implement COVID-19 strategies based on our community's transmission rates to protect students, teachers, and staff. According to New Hampshire's COVID-19 response webpage, we are currently in a substantial community transmission rate. A rate of 5% testing positivity is considered high. Our state is at a rate of 6.3% testing positivity. As of Friday, September 10th, Rockingham County has a positivity testing rate of 8%. Out of the 10 counties in our state, Rockingham County has made up 24.4% of total infections and 19.6% of deaths so far. As of Friday, September 10th, Rockingham County has made up 22.2% of total infections statewide. In quoting an article from NHPR from 5 days ago, cases of COVID-19 among New Hampshire children have been rising sharply in recent weeks. Over the past few days, close to 1/4 of all new infections in the state have been among children under the age of 18. As long as vaccines remain unavailable to those under 12, young people will continue to make up a large slice of infections. I'm hoping the board based their decision on masking on science, medical-based data, and not on discomfort or emotions. It is vitally important our school protect our children by limiting the transmission of COVID-19. Universal masking needs to be our first line of defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. All right, so with no further public comments, we're going to move into current business. We're going to go into discussions with Principal Cheney and Principal Denola.
Good evening. Do I need to move this? There we go. Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the opening of school. I first want to start by saying thank you to the staff at the Central School for a really positive opening to the school year this year. The kids are happy and learning, and that's really a reflection on our teachers and the positivity they bring to our school every day. We welcome back our new staff at the end of August. They started working with their mentors, getting their classrooms set up. And then we had a few days of PD at the beginning of the year where we learned about our new math program. We had some training with our school resource officer and got ready to set the year off in a positive tone. The first week of school has gone really well. I'm mindful that a week ago today was our first day. It's hard to believe. We started out with a kindergarten visit day where we utilized our outdoor spaces for teachers to meet with their parents while children went to go visit their new classrooms. We've had some new routines for the students to learn this year, but they're doing great. And parents are also learning our new routines with our new drop-off and pickup process. In fact, the drop-off process in the morning has been so efficient, we're going to consider keeping that even after the car loop and construction wrap up. We ended our first week of school with Read with a Hero. That's a tradition that's 19 years in the running. And this year we welcomed firefighter Hood from the Bedford Fire Department, Captain Dane from the Hempstead Fire Department, and from the Hempstead PD we had Officer Wilson, Detective Randall, Officer Winter, and Officer Wentworth. These Hempstead heroes came to read to our students. We were lucky it was a beautiful day, and again we took advantage of the weather in our outdoor spots by hosting this event outdoors. So I would also like to thank the heroes who participated. All in all, it's been a smooth reopening despite the construction occurring. Instruction has begun without a hitch, and things are humming along. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. And I will repeat what Dr. Cheney said with regards to our opening and our open house. Open house, there were many families that visited, and the families were welcomed into the classrooms. The classrooms were decorated, positive messages. Our facilities was clean and shimmering, and that is a thank you to the facilities crew. And thank you to the teachers and paraprofessionals that made it an exciting night, a little bit of anxiety on everyone's part, but we were very happy to have everyone back here into the hallowed halls of Hampstead Middle School. Our athletics started on the first day of school, which was a week ago today. So we had field hockey tryouts and soccer tryouts. Cross country started yesterday, and I just have to thank our coaches. Up until the couple days before school even started, we had three areas of sports that had no coaches. So there was a lot of people that were asked to step up, and could you share of your time and your energies. It's a lot of work to manage middle school sports, and we had a number of kids come out and try out, and cuts were made, and these are one of those life lessons that we don't always make it into the teams that we want, but we keep persevering and we keep working, and we take back the feedback that we've gotten from our coaches, and just like we do with our teachers and our parents, and we learn from it and we become resilient. And so I'm happy to say the kids are out there. They're doing their sports. Today was a warm day, but they were flushed and pumped to be together. So Hawks are back. Today we had Hawk Day, which was supported by Adventure Lore. Adventure Lore is a therapeutic corporation, or not a corporation, but an organization that has helped out schools for many, many years. And they came in and they worked with our kids every grade level for 90 minutes today. And they worked on the social and emotional pieces of coming back together in a school during a pandemic. How do we adjust to this? And that is a huge focus for us, not only as human beings, but as educators and having our Hawks back here at school. And it's been difficult for our kids. Many of these children haven't even laid eyes on each other for 18 months, or their teachers, and they've seen each other through screens. So the simple things that we would expect to be commonplace, like behavior in the hallway, well, they're flat tiring each other. It's middle school. You know what flat tiring is. They step behind you and you get their sneakers off. And then that gets this, and then there's the domino effect. And so we're working on these pieces of etiquette to keep everyone safe and tempers at bay, especially when we're moving from classes to classes. So they really worked on talking about cooperatively. What do you do at recess? We talked things about the Gaga pit, the lovely Gaga pit, that has been tarped. It is like a pool right now, but it will be opened again. We're working on skills and rules and how do we do this safely and kindly. So that was the focus of our work today with Adventure Lore. We hope to do much more with them in the future. And it was a great day. The weather was beautiful, and everyone participated, all the staff, all the students, and I'm just very pleased to say that it was a great day. And I have to thank our band director for moving out of his classroom today for the COVID vaccine clinic number 2 that we had. So the drums were outside drumming, and there was a lot going on here today. And then we have our fall dance on Friday. If any of you are free, please come by. It's just for the 7th and 8th graders. It is not a formal affair. It is just a dance in the courtyard outside with white lights and prepackaged foods and a great DJ, and it's going to be a great time. So we're back. Do you have any questions for me or any inquiries that I can answer?
I do have one, Ms. Nolan.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
About the soccer, about the cuts. I know this year it seems like, and I had a parent contact me asking about cuts, about, when we have that many kids come out to, try out, do we ever think about having a Team A and Team B? I had told them to refer to the athletic director, but
Yes.
just wondering if you'd want to talk to that at all, because I think this year we got
Sure.
somewhere upwards of 40 boys for the
We had-
boys soccer team.
We had 37
Okay.
boys try out for the team.
Yeah.
We had 20 places,
Right.
20 uniforms, and we, as I said, even a couple days before school started, we didn't have 3 coaches. We were very close to canceling the season.
Right.
Just like our field hockey team was traveling on Monday to a school for an away game, they canceled their season. They didn't have enough interest in coaching, and so we just need to staff even one team at this point. So we're very thankful for that. So.
Yep.
We're doing the best we can.
Okay.
But I encourage, as parents have reached out to me, please, we advertise these positions. They're out there all summer long. We were really hoping someone would step up from the community or anywhere that was able to coach in that capacity. And we did have some wonderful parents step up, even to help in the volunteer position.
Perfect.
So we're always looking for coaches. It is a continual need that we have. So if anyone is interested and you're CPR first aid certified and you have love and of the sport and love of our children, you have to apply.
Yep.
It's on AppleTrack.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, I have questions about like the reopening stuff, but I don't know where that falls in here.
Do you want to talk about that?
I don't know when you want to do that.
Or
I can wait.
I plan to address the reopening under the superintendent's report.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I wanted the
That's fine.
focus, or the opening is supposed to
Absolutely.
be
Yep.
on.
Nope. That's fine. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, so thank you very much. So the next one we're going to talk about is scholarships for Pinkerton seniors. Board members, in your packet, you have the history of what we've done for students. Usually there's 2 a year, is what it's been for the last number of years. We typically have, if you look at going all the way back to 2002, it was at $500, and over the years we've increased this up to $1,000 each student. So for this one, want to talk about, are we good with still continuing this? And if there's any changes anybody would like to recommend.
I'm good with continuing it. I think it's a nice way to connect our seniors back to Hampstead a little bit and reward kids for doing a great job.
I agree.
I will also say I really like that Pinkerton is the one who picks this because they're the ones who know the kids the best. So I think that's a great way to run the scholarship program.
Agreed. For me, I look at it, and I know we just increased it to 1,000, but looking at what college costs nowadays, I would like to talk about it. Do we think 1,000 is enough per student when we're talking about usually they're providing this to a student who's done the last one he was 4 years the student president, that some high achieving students that are going to these schools. Let's just be honest, none of them are cheap. $1,000 is just about what the textbooks cost, never mind anything else. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Well, do we have like budgeted amounts that we're allowed, or we just put a number out there and I don't know how that works?
Yeah. So typically we have this budgeted for what we've already approved. Correct. Typically we do have, let's say, a percentage over at the end of the year that I think that if we wanted to increase this, that, I'm not looking to increase this to 20,000, but I'm saying, I think there's enough in our budget that we'd be able to find to move it around if needed. Would you agree with that, Mr. Down?
Certainly, yep.
I don't know. That's just my thought here. I was entertaining bringing it up to the board, bringing it up to either 1,250 or 1,500 to help out the students a bit more than, so.
I would agree with that. That's a comment I was actually thinking as well, that, these days, $1,000 doesn't get you very far. So any little bit helps. So I'd be okay with increasing that a bit.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Megan?
Well, initially I was thinking 2,000, but I think 15 to 2,000, 1,500 to 2,000.
All right. I don't know.
I'm good with whatever. I've got a kid in college, so I know that.
So you know how cheap it is?
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to make the motion then. I'd like to make the motion that we increase to 1,500 and allow Pinkerton to pick the 2 students for the school year 2021 to 2022.
Second.
Any discussion more than what we've already done? All right. All approved? Raise your hand. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. All right. So next one, another one near and dear to my heart here, the 60s wing. So, Mr. Dowd?
Yes.
everyone hear me okay? Is that on? Can everyone hear me okay?
There you go.
Very well. Thank you. So 2 updates on the 60s wing. One is just an operational update. Obviously, we have our students in the building. Insulation has been applied to the building since the last time we met. We have a couple things which will be completed around Columbus Day. Nothing has changed there, so that's all good. So that's one side of the update. The other side of it is a budgetary update. And we really have not even received our actual bills in, for the most part, for the work that's been done, because it's just been finished and we have some work ongoing as well. So the very best that I can do for a budget update at this point is to highlight, you have a schedule in front of you of our costs. So our project cost was $2,095,000. We spent $288,602 to date, with $1.8 million remaining. I will say that we look good. So, and I'll say we look good overall. We're working within the budget. You'll see the top row is called a hard cost of budget 1.803 million. That's called a guaranteed maximum price contract. So we will not pay more than that, no matter what. I don't know that we're going to pay less than that, but I know that that's the maximum so far. We've had some exceptional and extraordinary challenges with the project, both in terms of unprecedented materials increases and escalations, labor shortages. We've been able to get all that done. We've been able to add brick fascia, actual brick, which is long-lasting and low maintenance. We've incorporated the storefront door for the south entrance, asbestos abatement for the interior of the school for some areas that we had not anticipated, and new carpets in the classroom. And I do believe that even with these add-ons, with these additions, we're still going to come in within our budget, well within our budget. I don't know exactly what that number is going to be, and we may not know until we get the final bills from the completion of the work in October, but we're looking really good. So I'm very happy with that, especially based on what none of us could have anticipated even 9 months ago.
Right.
Never. So.
Yep.
Good stuff. Any questions on that?
Just some of the questions we've had before. Windows, all the windows here now?
They are. I believe they are.
Okay.
We'll confirm tomorrow.
All right.
The windows are here. We have the windows that open. They're in the classrooms already. But in order to minimize any disruption in the classrooms, we're going to put the windows in along with the HVAC as one interruption in the classroom space.
That was my next question. HVAC, is it still at the end of this month right now, or is that slipping at all?
Columbus Day is the day that they're targeting.
Columbus Day. Okay, thank you. And then what about, and maybe this is a better question for Dr. Cheney, but during the day, are you, the teachers, the students, seeing anything as far as, taking away their attention based on the construction? I know this weekend I was at the school with my children on the playground. They were working, so I know they're doing what they said, which was weekends, nights, et cetera, but during the day?
No, during the day, the construction crew has been amazing. They spoke with us ahead of time to let us know they were going to minimize the noise and the impact, and the teachers' feedback has been really positive. I was hanging out in a kindergarten class watching them brick the other day. I said, "How's this going?" And they said, "Honestly, it's fine. The kids are so engaged and they're having so much fun, they're not even paying attention." So, no, it's been really positive. They've been great to work with.
All right, thank you.
Our general contractor has worked both with us and with each of their subcontractors in detail to minimize any interruption in the school day. Yes. And by that I mean to locate a mixer as far away from the school as they possibly can, or saws to cut as far away from the school as they can, in addition to trying to do the work nights and weekends. And we've also worked out with them a very specific protocol if we have workers who have to enter the building at some point to do any work inside. We have a specific protocol for that as well.
Yep.
So we're in good shape.
That's great. Any other questions for Mr. Dowd or Dr. Cheney? All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Tomselli, ESSER funding.
Hi, good evening. So I have an update on our ESSER funding. Our ESSER 2, I am so happy it has been submitted to the DOE for approval. We have not submitted all of the activities for that grant yet, but in ESSER 2, as I mentioned at the last board meeting, we're going to use that money to pay for Summer Learning Academy. We're also going to be covering the operational costs of 1 LNA and 2 custodians. If we need to make adjustments to that, we can. And then the third portion, the third activity, big activity, will be the tech upgrade for this board room in this space, which is next on the agenda.
All right.
I don't want to necessarily reveal the amounts because it's out for bid.
Okay.
But I'm very excited to have that out the door. The DOE is very busy right now approving grants, so I don't really have a timeline of when to expect it to get returned, but that back and forth will continue to happen.
Okay.
Previously, I mentioned that we would use ESSER 2 money to purchase curriculum that will help us do intervention and assessments. I'm going to instead budget for that using some Title IV money that's left over from 2019 to 2020. So we're still going to make those investments in intervention systems and assessment tools, but we're going to use different grant money, not ESSER. And then also, I'm very happy to kind of note that I was able to recoup some money from Title IV from 1819 to help with some educational technology purchases. So our kindergarten's going to be outfitted with iPads, hopefully very soon. And we'll have a few additional iPads, and that's coming from money from a few years back. So I was planning on using ESSER for that, but I don't need to.
I just want to say thank you for that. I mean, being able to go back and look at what we had from the last few years and use that so that the ESSER funding can be used for other activities. Really appreciate the due diligence there.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100%, that's excellent.
And once everything is approved and kind of done, I'd be very happy to share the budgetary pieces of that, but I'm hesitant to give a number or dollar figure until it's like stamped done.
That makes sense.
But it is approved, so I'm excited. ESSER 3 is where we have submitted all of our paperwork with the Department of Ed for GEPA and assurances. These are all kind of background pieces that make us eligible for state funding. So that is all completed. The money has not been released to us from the DOE yet, and again, I think that is more, they're pretty backlogged at this point, but I do have an email out to them kind of wondering when we'll get access to that pool of money. We are going to use ESSER 3 money to pay for connection coaches, which is going to help us provide continuity of instruction for students who might have to go out on quarantine or self-isolation periods. We're probably likely going to fund another summer learning academy with it, some additional after-school enrichment, and other professional development for innovative practices. With ESSER 3, one of the things that I had planned is that we would use some of the ESSER 3 money to do advisory program development. And I'm happy to report that that work has been done with Adventure Lore at the middle school, advisories and middle school program. That's also being paid for out of Title IV money from 1819. So I'm happy.
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Just one from me, nobody else. You mentioned that after-school enrichment, that we're going to look to use some of that money for that. Is that something we're going to start up in the fall?
So I've been working with Mrs. Denola and Mrs. Joseph and also the bus company, because if we're going to be offering things after school, we need to offer transportation. And the bus company is wanting to know a little bit more details, but it looks like they're probably going to be Tuesday, Thursday programming. Starting end of September.
Okay.
Having said that, we have a series of after-school clubs and activities that have been historically run here. There's also several new things. Some are being sponsored by the DOE. And then I really want to closely look at our needs around homework clubs and distinguish possibly a math homework club from an ELA homework club so that kids can get targeted help in those specific areas. So some of the after-school enrichment will be new and exciting, and maybe some new vendors. Let Go Your Mind is very interested in working with Hampstead's school district moving forward at the central school. But we do have a lot of logistics that we need to kind of figure out in terms of space, staffing on site, and busing.
Okay.
But
When do you think
it's in the
parents will
works.
start hearing more, besides at the board meeting here, but, more communication about what that looks like?
I would say I need to really get the transportation piece is the most, it's a little out of my hands, but that's the piece that makes me the most nervous. But I would say by probably within a week or two at the most.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is No other questions? We can go right to the tech upgrade.
Okay, so the tech upgrade update, we're calling it the Hampstead Broadcast AV upgrade. That's what we've decided to call it. We put the RFP out on the website. So if vendors are interested, we are going to have a mandatory site visit on September 21st, which is a Tuesday morning. Some of the vendors, interestingly, have asked to be able to come at separate time slots so that they can have access to the space and design their plans without necessarily overlapping. So I'll honor that as long as it's within that 1 hour window. And the bids are due September 30th at 10 a.m. And I do believe, we'll have several quotes coming. We had quotes prior to doing the RFP, but this is a more formal process that's required because we're spending state grant money to outfit this operation. So this is a more formal process we have to follow.
All right. That's great. Any
Any
questions? No, anything?
I know.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
You want to talk budget now?
Absolutely, I'm excited.
All right.
All right, in your packet, you will find an outline for the upcoming budget season. So budget season is now upon us. And I'd like to start first by thanking Mr. Dowd, who has just been so instrumental in getting me up to speed on all of the ins and outs of the budget. And, my assessment is Mr. Dowd has been an excellent steward of the taxpayer dollars. So he really is an asset to this process. So the process is underway. The building principals have been working with their staff to identify the building needs. This is a good conversation, separating out needs from wants. It's also when we do have new needs that emerge, we ask ourselves, are we able to reallocate existing funds? Or is this a new expenditure? Are there items that can be funded through a grant opportunity, which Mrs. Tomaselli has done an excellent job of managing? So those are the conversations that are currently occurring. The building principals will begin inputting the budget requests into Infinite Visions, which is the budgeting software that we use, on September 20th. That process will take about 10 days. On October 1st, that will be the first opportunity for Mr. Dowd, myself, and the other district leaders to go in and look at the overall budget. There's pieces that we'll input as well. I won't run through the entire document, but just to highlight a couple processes. So October 5th through October 8th, we will meet with the principals, we being Mr. Dowd and myself. We'll meet with the building principals. One of the new pieces that we've instituted, Mr. Dowd and myself have worked on what we call a new budget checklist, and you'll see that document in early October. Any new item that the building principals are proposing that is in excess of $500, it could be a new position, it could be a new program, and this is across all departments, gets inputted on the new budget sheet so that you'll have a quick reference guide to anything that is new. So the building principals and directors are working on those documents. On October 12th will be the first discussion that we have about the budget. That's really the sort of 20,000-foot aerial view, as principals are still working on finalizing some of those numbers. And then on October 19th, there's a budget development with the principals and the directors. It will be the opportunity for the board members to work very closely, to ask lots of questions. That's really when we're going to get into the granular of all of the different expenditures that encompass the budget. And then you see as we move along, throughout October, we'll continue to have budget workshops. In early November, that's really when we start to finalize the budget. Again, Mr. Dowd and I in early November will have one last look at it in terms of making any adjustments that need to occur. And then, our goal would be to get a budget to the board in December for final approval. Now, again, this is the FY24 budget. So what we're planning for right now is the budget that we will use for the 2023-2024 school year. This is in some ways an estimation of what we believe our expenses will be. One major change this year that we've been working as a team is we will use zero-based budgeting for our budget process. Now, what that means is we wouldn't just carry over an account line. We build the budget from the ground up. So if there's a specific account line where we're going to say use supplies in art, we would want to list out what are the needs for 2023. It's really as if we're not taking into consideration what was spent the year before and simply adding a CPI. We're literally, every year, we're going to build the budget. It's a time-intensive process, in particular this year, because this is a new way of budgeting. We're going to take time. We're going to work very collaborative as a team to ensure that we're able to do this. There's some account lines we won't be able to do that with. We don't know exactly what we're going to need for repairs for plumbing. So we'll have to do some sort of estimation, typically looking at a 3-year average to determine what that account line would be. But the process that we're going to use, which includes the new item checklist, but also the zero-based budgeting method, I think will create a significant amount of transparency, not only for the board, but for the taxpayers as well. And with that, I'll entertain any questions, as will Mr. Dowd.
Board members?
So, as you know, I get to look through the vouchers, and it's one of my favorites. But I just have a question. So when I'm looking through those, when I've been just sort of jotting things down that I might have questions about, would that be, where in this process would I get my list together and send that off? Would I wait till this work session on the 19th, or would you want that prior?
So that would be the formal date in which all of those questions that you have. I would say it would be helpful, if you have a running list of questions, even to send them to Mr. Dowd, knowing that, perhaps we can provide the explanation on the 19th.
All right, that sounds good. I'll have it ready.
Just for clarifications, it's the 22-23 budget we're doing, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the 22-23, sorry.
No worries. Just for the people at home.
Yeah,
just so
22,
they know.
yeah.
So,
Sorry.
no worries at all. And the other one is, I see on our cheat sheet here of the dates, we do have an October 5th budget work session. I do think we should cancel it, in my opinion. We have in the past. It gives you time to give a better input and output for us in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Anytime, we start the school year and then our budget for the following year is due. It's a tight timeline under normal circumstances. We're tweaking the budget process this year.
Right.
And admittedly, we have new people to our team. This is a new process, so allowing us a little bit of flex time with that early October deadline would be greatly appreciated.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think because we'll have those few hours on the 19th, working session here with all of us, I think that makes more sense. Anybody disagree or input?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
If I could, Aaron, if you had some general things you've picked up on or other areas that you'd like focus or answers on, probably the sooner in the process that we know about that, the better, because I think some of it might be philosophical.
Okay, yeah.
So as the budget is being built and constructed, if there is something philosophical that we should be looking at, it'd be good to look at.
I will do. Currently, they exist on a whole bunch of Post-it notes that I have to put into some sort of order that makes sense.
Bring the Post-it notes in and drop in Mr. Thompson's office. He's got some Post-its in
I've
there
got plenty
already.
of Post-it notes.
Yeah.
They'll fit right in.
Okay. That makes sense. Just looking over the balance of the time. And when would, I guess, Mr. Thompson, I know we've talked briefly about this, but if I'm looking at November 9th, the board meeting, pending budget items and bond, when do you think in this process we would be start talking about any possible bond
Yeah, I think
topics?
I'll defer to Mr. Dowd.
Yeah, I'll be frank. I think the sooner we can talk about that, the better.
Okay.
We do have a building aid application coming up for January 1st, so it would be real nice to know what we have for a project. And I don't think that the bond necessarily is the core of it. That's sort of what, that has to be driven by something.
Right.
And it's the project that we really need to talk about. Okay. And, typically we've gone in and looked at the project, made some adjustments to it. I know it's hard because we already have a project going on now, but if we're going to advance a project next year, now would be the time to look at it. The way that Building 8 is set up, we probably wouldn't be able to start construction on that from, like we did this year. We started from a March ballot in June. So we wouldn't be able to start until the subsequent June, but that's okay, because we can see what a tight time frame this smaller renovation project has been.
Right.
So it would be fine for us to be able to wait that year, but we would need to know what the scope of the project is and what pricing is. And we're going to have to carry it forward basically a year and a half
Okay.
in terms of pricing.
All right.
So,
So then would it make sense then to possibly at the next board meeting start discussing that a little bit more
yeah, and
in more detail than what we're doing right now?
yeah, and we'll have our construction meeting tomorrow. So if we wanted to plant the seed as to what their workload looks like,
Yep.
it would probably be helpful to be able to bring that back
All right.
to the board to tell you what their time frame
What does
is.
everybody think? Next board meeting, start having the discussion about what we want, if we want, and start to plan what that looks like?
I think that sounds good. And I think it also keeps fresh in everybody's minds the challenges that there have been this year, just at the beginning of the year with space. So it kind of all ties in together.
Yep. Okay. We'll make sure that's on the agenda for next board meeting then. So, thank you. Any other questions on the budget meeting schedule? Anything else from anyone? All right. Let's see, student services presentation.
And just to preface the presentation a little bit, one of the first actions that our administration took was to retitle and sort of repurpose the Department of Special Education into the Department of Student Services, which is a little bit more all-encompassing in terms of support for students. And I did have some community members that reached out to me. They just wanted to know more about that. And, we were still in the process of identifying Tracy as the Director of Student Services, and I thought, who better to roll out the vision for Student Services than our new Director of Student Services, Tracy Griffin-Hagen. So I'll turn it over to her.
Hi.
Hey, Tracy.
Thanks for having me. So, student services, it is all encompassing, and this picture is of Adventure Lore actually, and then the first day of school with your hawk and your husky, which was a lot of fun. So, admittedly, the elementary school kids were a little more excited than especially the 8th graders to see the hawk, but the hawk was not deterred by our middle schoolers. So, who does student services serve? All students, really. We tend to think of it as students on plans, but it's any student, and that's really the benefit of this position, is that for somebody nosy like myself, we have our hands in all the pots, and our position overlaps with curriculum and technology as well. So there's real strength in collaboration. So students with individualized education plans, students on 504 accommodations, English language learners, families in transition, and then of course supporting the social and emotional needs of all students. And this year in particular, that's important, and as Maria has referenced, we've seen that. And so, I'm able to work with Nicole, use grant funds to say, what else do we need? What else can we do to support our students? So if our 5th graders are having a rough time sort of managing the freedom of middle school recess, what resource can we bring in to help structure some of that, such as Adventure Lore? And those are the conversations that we're having all the time. So to me, that's really exciting because as a special ed director, you have your hand in programming for a really important group of students, but a director of student services, you have your hand in programming for all students to include our students on plans. So what we do, we ensure federal compliance with IDEA and Section 504. That's really important. We ensure compliance with federal and state regulations and local policies, such as the bullying policy, discipline policy. So I work with building level administration to make sure that those things are in place and we're following the standards set forth by the state. We provide resources for staff and families. One of the initiatives I want to take on this year is to have 3 or 4 parent sessions in the evening to talk about things like parts of an IEP, or what do I do if I'm concerned about my child's organization skills? What is developmentally appropriate for executive functioning skills for that frontal lobe? Those sorts of things. And not just presented by me, but by other experts who I've collaborated with. And then creating programming that meets the needs of our unique learners. And that's really the exciting thing about being in Hampstead and really having a smaller SAU, because we have incredible opportunities. We have a great staff. We're well-resourced thanks to the town and to the board. And so it's looking at all of those pieces to make sure that we're using it to the best of our abilities, to use it better. That's the term that Bob has set forth, and that's the term I use with staff. It's not to say that the things we've done in the past weren't okay. They were, but our student population is always changing. It's always dynamic, and so our programming and our resources need to change with that. We need to be able to adjust. So these are just some quick information, quick education. So when we talk about IDEA, it stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Act, and it was the 1975 landmark civil rights legislation, and this was huge. This took close to 2 million students who often were not included in our public education setting back into the public schools. So when we look at a school like Central School and we wonder why we're so tight on space, it's because that school was built before 1975. They weren't accounting for these other students to come back into the building. And of course, we are accounting for that. So our buildings need to adjust. We don't want to outplace a student simply because we don't have the space to provide the programming, right? Even if we have the staff. For some programming, we need more space. And if we don't have that, then that puts us in a precarious position, because we want to offer the student the best education, free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment, which tends to be our home community schools. Okay? And that's what we are required to provide, a free and appropriate public education to every child ages 3 to 21. And right now we have 7 million individuals with disabilities who are in public schools, and in our pre-K through 12, it's about 239 students. That includes our Hampstead Pinkerton students and our out-of-district students. How does a student qualify for an IEP? And I have to, preface this with saying this is like truly the Reader's Digest version. But the student must have a disability. There are 13 educational disabilities in the state of New Hampshire. Please don't ask me to quote them all, although I probably could quote most of them. Specific learning disabilities, autism, other health impaired, those tend to be the most common, but certainly we have students with multiple disabilities, hearing impairments, and whatnot. The student's disability must adversely affect educational performance, and we use a battery of evaluations and data points to determine that. And then the student's disability must require specially designed instruction. So the team gets used to me saying, okay, so what is the specialized instruction that this student needs? Okay? And that's a real key component, because that's over and above the free and appropriate public education that we offer to all students. So should a student qualify as a student with an educational disability, they then get an individualized education plan, otherwise known as an IEP. And again, this plan outlines the student's strengths, the student's challenges. It outlines all the data that we collected. It outlines the student's present academic performance and functional performance. And it outlines goals that the specialized design instruction is meant to achieve. So everything needs to be monitored, data needs to be collected, multiple data points. Special education is above and beyond FAPE, as I just described. It is in addition to regular education. It's in addition to that, okay? And again, the 13 categories. So in this plan, it's, and again, it needs to be unique. That's why it's called individualized. As the students get older, I love to include, when case managers include students in parts of the meeting, if not all of the meeting. I love when we talk to students about the accommodations that they want in the classroom, especially middle schoolers, because they might say, I don't want to be removed for a test. Okay, then let's have that conversation with mom or dad or guardian right here so we can talk about how to manage that to maintain your integrity while also making sure that you get the support you need so that you're able to demonstrate your knowledge the most effectively. 504 accommodations are different, okay? We often say that 504 accommodations are to level the playing field. So this is under the Rehabilitative Act, sorry, not the Americans with Disabilities Act, my typo. And these are classroom accommodations, so things that are over and above what a teacher would give to every student that this student particularly needs in order to access the education. So what might that be? It could be auditory system that makes the teacher's voice louder and clearer. It could be allowing fidgets. It could be preferential seating in the front of the room. It could be more breaks than what might be offered another student. And it gives students ways to learn and demonstrate knowledge of the same material as other students their age. And it removes obstacles. So again, a student has to have a qualifying disability. It can be there's many, many different things. And it's written up in a plan. The difference between this and an IEP is that a 504 plan doesn't have goals. It doesn't have those specific goals that the specially designed instruction is meant to achieve, right? So this has accommodations. It's like a roadmap for the classroom teacher. What is it that this student needs over and above to help them to be successful in my class? Students in transition, these are families who may be experiencing homelessness. We have what's called the McKinney-Vento Act, and it establishes very specific guidelines regarding homeless youth. And it is defined as children who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And unfortunately, we have homeless youth in our district. We do. And so I work with families, I work with building level administration. They often are our first line of communication with families, and then we offer them a variety of supports. We may include the social worker, the school nurse, myself, and things like transportation, wraparound services to make sure that those kids are coming to school and they have the tools that they need to be successful. So these are areas of priority that I've developed, in collaboration certainly with Bob and Nicole, and talking to building principals and talking to staff. So the first is a special education program review. And really what this means is that I'm going to bring in an outside person this is his area of expertise. His name is Kevin Murphy from Stratford Learning Center. And he is going to interview staff. He's going to review some IEPs with consent. He's going to observe and look at what programming do we already have. And then he's going to help us as a team develop an action plan in terms of what is a sustainable model for Hampstead. Maybe it's doing what we're already doing. Maybe it's tweaking some things. And I really feel this is important because, again, it's not that things haven't been done well, but we have a different population of students. We have more students identified with emotional behavioral disorders than what has happened in the past. So we need to look at then what is the unique programming we can offer those students to keep them in their home school and to make sure that they're successful. 504 plans, I will be attending a 3-day training and then rolling that out to our school counselors to make sure that we are using the most updated systems to stay in compliance. Response to intervention, or what's called a multi-tiered system of support. And this is making sure that all students, regardless, we talk about the pyramid with level 1 being for all students, tier 1. Tier 2 are those students who need just some help here or there. So maybe that one unit in math, they just didn't get it. So what can we offer them to make sure that they have that basic knowledge to move on to the next unit? And then tier 3, which is that specialized instruction. So I will be working with Nicole. We'll be collaborating again with our curriculum leaders, our building administration, to make sure that is a data-driven system And when I say data, I mean multiple points of data, not just hardcore assessments, but that anecdotal teacher data, that's also important, and that we have the resources to truly address students' needs. We'll be reviewing policy to ensure compliance with updated state regulations and examine that space utilization that I had already referred to. Oh, and that's it. Any questions?
I have a couple questions, mostly regarding the situation with the lack of paras.
Yep.
So, do you currently have enough paras to cover the IEPs that we have, or are we still struggling to get people to?
Our students are covered.
Okay.
We still need more paras. so both. And I'll tell you, I was at a South Central directors meeting just this week, 30 directors around the table, and the facilitator said, who is still looking to hire paras? Every hand went up. And so we are going to repost some positions. We're going to see what we can get and move from there. But unfortunately, it's a shortage.
Right.
Especially when, quite honestly, you can make, $15, $18.
That was my next question regarding paras. Have we looked at like our neighboring communities? Like, is our pay even comparable, or should we be looking at potentially, maybe having to increase the pay so that we can get the people in?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say, that work should really be done about the time of contract negotiation. We should be looking at those surrounding towns to see where we lie. I haven't done that work for this region because we have a contract in place, quite frankly. But I think that would be worthwhile work to look at that and to look at whatever differentials other communities offer.
That's all I have on that.
Okay.
Question about the program review.
Yes.
I think that's great. I was just curious, do you know when the last time we did a program review here?
I don't know. I mean, that's a great question, and I can certainly get that answer for you for next board meeting. I'm sure that there was a compliance review at some point by the state because every district goes through it. This is something a little bit different because we're initiating it on our own.
Yeah.
And really the purpose of it is different. So when the state comes in to do a review, they're really looking at the nuts and bolts of, are your IEPs meeting state compliance? This is really looking more holistically at space and program needs and sustainability, because we have to talk about that as well. And so this will be a little bit more holistic, I think, and definitely more collaborative. It's not like the state coming in looking for things that we've done wrong. Mr. Murphy will come in and look for things that we've done right and that we want to keep and maintain.
All right. Thank you. My other question is about, I don't see it as a priority, but I know you're working on this, and I think it's worth mentioning.
Yep.
But can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing to ensure that we're getting all the grants that we can for this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we have the IDEA grants. That's the grant that I manage, and there's work to be done in that area. But I work closely with Jeff in the business office, and I'm glad that I have experience in grant management, quite a bit of experience, and so we'll make sure, much like Nicole's put in the hard work of maximizing all of those dollars, we will as well. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but
I just want to highlight it for the public that
Yep.
it's something that, I know in talking to Bob, this is something you all see as a big opportunity for us.
absolutely.
And I don't want to minimize the work you're doing, and make sure that, the community knows, the amount of work that is going into this to do even more, to bring
Yes.
more funds here than what has been in the past.
Yes, and so outside of IDEA, I mean, that is something that I feel like Nicole and I are always talking about, different grant resources, and again, that's sort of the advantage of having a director of student services. So I have been successful, for example, in obtaining a New Hampshire Council for the Arts grant in a previous district, and those are definitely things that we are going to dive into once we get a few things going at the start of the school year. But yes,
Okay,
yes.
Nicole behind you.
Free and reduced lunch applications, that we still want them, Yes, we do still want families to fill out free and reduced lunch applications. That is helpful to us as grant funds are determined by the federal and state level.
Gotcha.
So even though lunches are free, that information is still helpful to us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Okay. Well, I hope to be able to give you updates, especially with the program review. That will be something that will definitely keep the board informed.
That's great.
And thank you for this. I think this was really great, and I love the term unique learners. I think that's great.
I do have one last question. I'm sorry.
Yes,
You're
no.
not off yet. I know for myself, when I looked at for whether or not my daughter needed an IP or not, I felt kind of lost, right?
Yeah.
As far as what's the first step? So if you were to tell a parent right now watching, maybe it's a first grader, maybe it's somebody coming to the school system, if they have even a question about this, who should they reach out to first, or what's that first step?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think always reaching out to the classroom teacher is helpful. If they have a question, though, about the special ed process or about the 504 process, just want to pick a brain, they can certainly call the Office of Student Services, because I do think it's daunting. It is absolutely daunting. And personally, I've been on both sides of the table, certainly on this side of the table as the special educator and administrator, and on the opposite side of the table as a parent. And even though this is my career, when I'm on that opposite side of the table, it's still overwhelming and it's still daunting. And that is something that I try to keep in the mindset of our staff, that we can be very clinical about it. This is our job, but it's never clinical when you're talking about somebody's most precious someone, right? And we always have to keep that in mind. So I would say the classroom teacher, the school counselor, but certainly my office is always open to answer any questions about the process and to be a resource for families.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that concludes current business. We're now going to go around board comments, correspondence. We'll start off on my far left to Jason. All set. All right. Caitlin?
I don't have anything.
Nothing tonight.
All right. Two things for me. First, thanks to Mrs. Denola. On the first day, I have a very forgetful daughter who I had to bring something into the school system, and Ms. Denola saw me and said, hey, do you want to take a walk around? And it was only an hour into the school, and we got to go around to probably half a dozen classrooms, see dozens and dozens of children. And it was good to see that there were some students without their masks, there's some students with their masks, but it all seemed very comfortable. And Ms. Denola had commended the teachers to, they talked to each student, in groups to say, here's our mask policy, and they didn't make them feel uncomfortable to take the mask off or to keep it on. So he kept it pretty neutral, which brings me to my second one, which was a parent email that I exchanged about masks. This parent had asked, it seems like mixed messages about masks. And my reply was, I think in the first day or two, students might have not known exactly, but after a week, I'm hearing students are coming into this and understanding what our mask policy is. But if any parent is feeling like, the student is confused, I'd ask first the parent to talk to their child and say, here's our policy. When you're 3 feet apart, you're in the classroom, sitting at the desk, you can take the mask off. You don't have to feel peer pressured one way or another. I know for me, I had that discussion with my child, and through a number of emails, I think we've all seen a number of parents have had to do the same. So that's the first thing I would say. And if you have any questions after that, reach out to the teachers, building principals, SAU office. I can assure you that that message is being repeated, but we're also not repeating it every day for every student to make them feel one way or another pressure to do something. So that's my correspondence.
I had the opportunity also to come into the middle school on Friday of last week. It was great. The kids were kids. They were students. They were happy. They were chatting in the hallways. They were engaged. I watched them in classrooms, and they were in groups learning. Sort of learning how to even work together again, sitting at their at their desks and just being students. It was great. It was nice to see. It was relaxed. It was calm. It was collaborative. I really left feeling pretty good about the whole thing. I did notice. I also, of course, took note. Just by observation, sort of, how many kids had masks on, how many didn't at their desks, and I would say most of the kids had them on, and that was by their choice. It was, no pressure there. Some had them off, but I would say the majority just had them on. And I know when I've asked a few of the kids that I know, they're just like, it's just easier to leave it on. So it's really not a problem for them. I love the lunchroom setup. I actually think that the kids, the way that the tables are set up for them, they actually can, while still chat with each other, they look like they're more than 6 feet apart too, actually. And they were still chatting, but they actually got to eat their lunch. Usually lunch is so, like, they're just like scarfing it down, or they don't have time to eat because they've been in line, or they're too busy trying to find a seat at a table, but they just get their stuff, come down, sit, talk to each other. It was great. I also had the opportunity to look through some of the classrooms, and I saw some really great tools that are being used with like whiteboard desks and things like that, which I thought was awesome. Like for math, you can just do your math work right on the tables. It was really overall a really positive experience. I left feeling pretty good, and I felt like the kids were happy. I felt like the staff was happy that the kids were back, and so that's, I think, ultimately for all of us, like that's our goal. Let's keep these kids in school and doing this and with their teachers and in their groups, learning and doing what they're supposed to do, because they're not going to get that in front of a screen. So I was really, really happy to see it.
That's great. Thank you, Erin. All right. So that's all comments, correspondence. We'll go on a consent agenda with Mr. Thompson.
Okay, you'll find in your board packet under personnel report, we do have one action, one nomination for a professional staff member. This is to fill the vacancy of a 6th grade math teacher at Hsdsb Middle School. So I am recommending to the board the nomination of Sabin Thompson, no relation, to fill that position. We're very fortunate. This was a vacancy that came up over the summer. As you are well aware, summer hires are very difficult to make, but Sabin is stepping into this role. This is an individual who's been with us since 2011. She's worked in our response to instruction program as a math paraeducator. She comes with a ton of experience working with all learners, actually, but particularly struggling learners, to ensure that they are able to get to grade level with their math. So this is a very strong hire.
That's great. Anyone? Any questions?
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Make a motion to accept the recommendation of Sabin Thompson for the math position.
I'll second that.
All approved? All right.
Thank you.
And congrats, Miss Sabin. That's right when I heard the name, I was like, oh.
I was like, that looks familiar.
So, all right. Anything, the superintendent's report, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on Dr. Cheney and Mrs. Denola's comments about the opening day. It really was an extraordinary opening. We welcomed staff back on Tuesday, August 31st. We had a whole district meeting with staff right here in this room. Really, as I said to the staff, it was sort of a historic moment, as it was the first meeting of the single district SAU. And all staff were present. We had bus drivers, we had custodians, we had our support staff, we had our administrators. And it was really a great opportunity for us to talk about what we value as a school district, what some of our priorities are for the work, those priorities obviously being children. And then the highlight of that meeting was we honored the years of service of the teachers in the district. And we honored, one particular moment, we honored the longest serving employee in the Hempstead School Department is Larry Guay. He's a custodian at the Hempstead Central School. It was just such an awesome moment to be able to honor Larry. So it was a really strong start, and that was followed the next day by the open houses at both schools. And I have to tell you, this was a new model for me. Most schools, they have their open house after the school year starts. You let people get settled in. So I was curious about how this was going to work. What a tremendous job the buildings do. You know, having the children and their parents come into the building prior to this school starting. I could see when kids first walked in with their parents, there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of nervousness. When you watch them leave, you can just see this weight being lifted from them. So I have to tell you how impressed I am with the organization of an open house that actually occurs before the start of the school. It's a novel idea and it works very, very well. Additionally, I have to, talk about our pandemic response. We had our first case on Thursday, September 9th in the 4th grade at the Hampstead Central School. To date, it is the only case that we've had. There is no evidence of any community transmission to this point. We also, for those of you who want to follow the data, if you go to the COVID section of our website, there's a Google Doc there. You'll be able to click on and you'll be able to see the case, the grade level, and the date of the case as well. This will be in addition to the dashboard that Health and Human Services at some point will put into place. We'll put the dashboard up as well. But currently, if you go to the Department of Health and Human Services school dashboard and you click on Hampstead, you see data for last year. They haven't updated it for this year. So I would just encourage folks, if you really want to know what the actual numbers are, start with the spreadsheet. And you're likely to see a discrepancy throughout the year because the Department of Health and Human Services, at times, it can be slow for them to update that data. But then I'd also encourage folks, if you're curious about numbers, please reach out. I'd be happy to share whatever information I can. Obviously, I have to balance the privacy needs of students, but if I can share information with you, I'm certainly willing to do that. Also, in regards to our pandemic response, on Friday, Tracy Griffin-Hagen, our Director of Student Services, toured the buildings with Convenient MD. We've been given the go-ahead to participate in the Safer at Schools screening program. We had interest from a little over 70 families that had indicated that they would want to do. This would be testing that is done on a monthly basis. It is PCR testing. Students are called down at a non-instructional time in a private setting where they are tested. Completely optional program. Registration information should be going out to parents from Convenient MD within the coming days, and our hope is to put that in place as early as the last week of September. Now, another important data point I just wanted to share with the community is we do have a number of students that are in quarantine. Currently, we have 22. That is, we had a number of students, approximately 12 students, I believe, that actually started the year in quarantine. And I just want to note for folks, there's a variety of reasons that that children are quarantining. Some have traveled internationally, which requires quarantine. Some have a household contact that is tested positive, and those individuals are not vaccinated, so they have to quarantine. We have students that are quarantining because they had symptoms here at school. They were sent out for testing and they're awaiting results. And then we also have students that may have been a close contact of somebody. They weren't required to quarantine, but as a family they decided that it may be safe for them to quarantine until such time that they could get a test. And we have been providing, through Nicole's leadership, what we're calling connection coaches, which are school personnel, mostly the classroom teacher, that is reaching out and working with students remotely who are required to quarantine or are quarantining because of a possible exposure. So a child, you're not on your own. If you have to quarantine, there's a continuity of your educational program. We can set up instruction, tutoring with a classroom teacher, with paraeducators, to make sure that if you have to be out, we're going to account for your education. And then lastly, and most importantly, I want to focus on instructional leadership. This is great. School has started. This administrative team has been tasked with getting into classrooms, spending time watching teachers teach, watching students learn. That's a priority for our team, as we need to understand instructional practices. We are servant leaders. It's our job to support the work that's going on in the classroom. We've spent the summer talking about things like response to instruction, universal design for learning. These are research-based best practices. Now that school has started, our team is actually able to go into classrooms and see how this is working, provide feedback to teachers, provide coaching opportunities for teaching, but it's an absolute priority of this new administrative team to be in classrooms, be at the heart of where learning occurs. And with that said, just one final note, we had our Hampstead leadership team meeting this morning, and we're reading a book called The Leadership Challenge, We had a great conversation this morning. This is a wonderful book for those of you who are in leadership positions, aspire to leadership positions, whether in education or not. This is a central focus point of our administrative team this year, is to focus on leadership and supporting students in the classroom and the teachers who teach them. And with that said, I will open up to any questions people have about any of the items I've talked about or anything else you might want to talk about as well.
Oh, I have questions. You can go first if you'd
I'll
like.
do the easy one first, if that's it.
Yeah, that's
no. No, I'd just like to echo what you were talking about on the I should have brought it up during correspondence that Aaron and I were able to attend when,
Me too.
with the entire, staff. It wasn't just teachers, it was paras, it was bus drivers, it was janitorial staff, it was, everybody was here, and I gotta say, it was really great.
Awesome.
Standing up in front, I was almost overwhelmed with, it was like a first day back, and it's gonna be a full year, it's, there's a lot of greatness there. I don't wanna put you on the spot, but I think you said something at the very end that I think's worth mentioning to parents, if you're okay, that how you ended it,
Yeah, what do you got?
with how you talked about the seat,
The
the
chair.
chair.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was worth it because, I've actually thought about that a lot. And I think that if parents know how we're approaching as a leadership team, in the challenge you put out there, I think that's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in our presentation, the last slide of the presentation was a picture of my 3 children. And as I explained to our entire staff, what really informs my educational vision is my own children. I have 3 children. They're all 3 very different and very unique children. Some have tremendous confidence when they walk through the school door. Others might lack confidence, and some may struggle academically. And so whenever I am put in a position where I have to make a decision about instruction, about students, I always use the framework of what would I want for my own kids. And I can always associate a child who might be struggling or a child that needs something from the school with a quality that I find in my own children. And so I challenge the staff, and I challenge anyone who's working with children. There's that chair in the room, and I want you to think every time you're making an important decision, think about the child that you care about most in your life, the most important child. And make sure that the decision that you're making for the child that's sitting in that chair, your child, is the same decision that you make for everyone else's child. And that's what I would say to parents that are listening is, I will always make the best decision for your kid based upon what I would do for my own children.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think
Never a
it was
problem.
really great to hear. And, I would say correspondence actually after is, it's small town. So, friends that are teachers, and I've never had a teacher friend of mine say that first day when I met everybody was great. I had 3 people reach out and just saying that was such a great, way to start the school year. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I agree. I should have said the same thing. Once you brought it up, I was like, I didn't mention that because that was awesome. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I did hear from teacher friends as well that typically it's all business at those meetings, and they were just they were energized. You got them really. It was just such a team, and everyone was having fun with each other. And I didn't expect to get emotional at that, so I wasn't. A little heads up would have been nice, but but honoring the I can't remember his name. Sorry, the custodian Larry was so touching, and he was so moved, and the whole thing was just amazing. So I think it did start the year off really well. So nice
Onward
job
and
on
upward.
that. And you didn't sound nervous, even though
I was very nervous. Still am.
So with that, I do actually have kind of a list of questions. One being the Safer at Schools program. The cost for that, how is that paid for? Is that something that the school pays for through funds, or I'm just curious how that works?
Yeah, the state of New Hampshire received a $40 million grant from the U.S. government. So there is no incurred cost, direct cost to taxpayers. It's all grant funded. And the management of that grant is done at the state level, so we don't have to even manage the program.
Okay, so another question I have is that, with some of the staffing issues that we know we have, I think what I gathering is that in some cases, there could be, say, a para or another teacher that, or like a art on the cart. I know we don't have that, but I'm just using that as an example, that might enter a classroom that doesn't normally enter a classroom. So if a student or teacher if there's a positive test in that classroom, how are we keeping track of who actually has been in that classroom, and how are the staff members being notified of that? Because I'm almost wondering if in some cases where this, that person might not typically be in that room, so you might go, oh, I didn't think to call them and let them know. Do you almost want to have a sign-in sheet or something like that to sort of keep track?
Yeah, so that's a conversation that Dr. Cheney and I had after the case that we had last Thursday. And I had shared with members of the board and the administration what we call a COVID communication protocol. And that is, when we have a case, these are the steps that we take, because communication is absolutely critical. The timing of that communication is really important. That is a living, breathing document. And so we're in the process of making some adjustments to that document for that very thing. And that's really part of contact tracing. That's information that we would give to Health and Human Services. So that information is available. We just need to account for it in the communication pieces. And it can be tricky with paraeducators if you have 3 or 4 paraeducators that are rotating in and out of a classroom. So Dr. Cheney and I are working on a way of capturing that in the form of a sign-in sheet or some other process. There's always going to be situations where we're continuously going to look at how we improve communication. And I think you've heard me say this before. No one will ever be accused of over-communicating. It's always an area for improvement, no matter how good we are at doing it.
Right. And this is all, new, so to speak, right? So we haven't actually been in classrooms so much, a little bit last year, but not as much. So obviously these things are a work in progress, but, questions definitely want to ask to kind of keep it on the forefront. I guess you did mention that we have the Excel sheet for, so where exactly is that on the website?
So on the front page of the website, when you go to the website, the first thing you see
Yeah.
is COVID resources. And if you click on that, there is our LEA plan. There's our roadmap to reopening. There's some other resources in response to COVID-19. And one of the first documents that you see is that Excel sheet.
Okay. So
And right now it has the number 1 on it, because we've only had the one case.
So I am a little unclear of how parents will know when we're close to universal masking. So how exactly is that going to be communicated?
Yeah, and I think, it does, warrant an updated communication to parents, because, if you thoroughly read through those documents, which there's a lot of pages of those documents, the Department of Health and Human Services does break that down, and our masking matrix that has been board approved does as well. So essentially right now, we are in that targeted phase where masks are required in our schools, with the allowance for students to remove those masks in a controlled environment, such as a classroom or the cafeteria, when 3 feet of spacing is achievable. We would move to universal masking. That means masking for everyone all the time, with the exception of the outdoors. If we were to have one cluster in our schools, and the Department of Health and Human Services defines a cluster as 3 cases where there is some evidence of community transmission. If we are utilizing the same process with Health and Human Services as we did last year, we won't make that determination. The Department of Health and Human Services will say to us, based upon the information that we've received in looking at the other cases, we believe that this is a cluster. If that were the case, there'd be a communication from me that would indicate that that was the case, and that following school day, we would move to universal masking.
Okay, and so it would be universal masking for the entire school, not just that classroom?
It would be for the entire, per the decision-making matrix and the DHHS toolkit, we would go pre-K through grade 8.
Okay. I think I had another question, but you answered most of them. I think that you answered my questions. Oh, I did have one more question. I'm sorry. I have so many notes on here that
it's
I
okay.
lost track of where I was. So I'm curious, how are the kids that are, how is the remote learning going? Like for the kids who are in quarantine, is that going well?
It's going well, and I don't want to steal her thunder because she's done a ton of work in getting this off the ground. So Nicole, do you want to real quickly just talk about what we've put in place?
Thank you. And I want to relay that thunder to Mrs. Lori Lynn Griffin, who is being purposed as our Connections Coach Coordinator this year. And she's extraordinary in every way. So this is a very new system we're designing, but like we were saying earlier with the child in the chair, you know, I think about what I would want for my own children if I got the phone call that, you know, you're going to need to stay quarantined for up to 20 days. What would I want my school district to offer our family? And that's really the impetus for all of the rest of it. So basically, what we're doing is once we get the expected return date from school to school, and we know the child's going to be out for a set period of time, we have a phone call. I have been making the phone calls myself, but we are going to start utilizing the school school counselors to help with this. The phone call goes home to the family to say, do you want to opt into this? Because I have an abundance of respect for people's privacy. If they do not want to Zoom and do not want their child to participate in remote learning, I completely respect that, and that will end the conversation. But if they do, we have a registration form that we fill out, or we send to them, rather, it's a Google form. They can opt for individual Zooms or group Zooms. And again, I really clarify with the families, this is a privacy thing, because once you say a group Zoom, you're going to be in a group, and you'll see other kids, and you'll know their names, and I would, it's been fascinating because most families are like, sign them up. Sign us up for everything. So what's happened so far is Mrs. Griffin is running a morning advisory every day for middle school students at 8:05. So it's a virtual online advisory where they do a lot of connections with each other, welcoming type of things, and some SEL, get to know you kind of things. And then those kids go off to their individualized schedules. She crafts an individualized schedule with them. But before I get too far down that path, I want to say that she's offering the same thing as a morning meeting for central school students. So daily calendar, weather, you know, scavenger hunts, kind of warming up the day. So I'd like to keep those pieces in place always. And then once we know that a family wants to opt into this, she reaches out to the classroom teacher, or at the middle school here, it's the team, to say, we have a work opportunity. Does anyone want to pick this up? And the teachers have been very responsive. And again, I can't thank them enough because this is work that's being done above their contracted time. And they're gathering work, they're uploading things to Google Classrooms or to Seesaws, and that allows Mrs. Griffin to push the assignments out to them or to coach them through with a shared screen or in a group setting.
And I also think it's important to note that we're talking specifically about students who are required to quarantine,
Right.
or that we've identified as a close contact and they have chosen to quarantine. So this isn't a universal option. We don't have the resources to be able to support that, unfortunately.
And this is a short term. The longest term we're talking about is a 20-day.
Right.
But those are 20 continuous days, including weekends. So, you know, for most kids, it might be a 16, 17-day at the most.
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, it sounds to me that you have, well, number one, I love Mrs. Griffin, so the kids can't go wrong with her anyway. But, you know, kudos to all of you for everything you've put into place for these kids. I'm really impressed, and
Well, it's not
Great
perfect,
job.
and we're still refining it. And but I'm very pleased that, and I honestly, we have a CIA meeting for South Central on Friday, and I can't wait to brag that we're offering things because I'm curious what other districts are doing. Because naturally that question comes up, and I have to give a lot of credit to our school nurses because they have been fielding the majority of the families' questions around the policies from DHHS, the quarantine requirements, the what are we going to do, and our school nurses are extraordinary. There is an abundance of work associated with all of this that they they're the first communication, quite frankly.
Well, like you said, it's a work in progress, but I think that you have all laid a really good foundation to build off of, so I
Thank you.
thank you all for that.
Yeah. Well, it's a team. Bob's
All
very
of
generous,
you.
but it's a team. There's a lot of really great people making this happen, so.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Sure.
All right. Is that it, Mr. Thompson?
I think that's all my questions,
sorry, is that
believe it.
every-
I think that's all my questions, yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have any other business, old business to go over. So we are going to go in a non-public. Oh, sorry.
Before you conclude the meeting, I did want to share just a brief update and give a special thanks to our voters and our taxpayers in town. Our highlights for the 2021 year, fiscal year, financial highlights. Our revenue for the year was $27.1 million. Our general fund expenditures were $27.377 million. It seems like we've overspent. We haven't. It's fine. We're able to fully utilize the $500,000 that was voted by the voters for us for the 60s Wing project. So I'd like to thank the town for recognizing the creative funding that we were able to use and the worthiness of that project. The school board voted to retain $250,000, which we were able to do, and we're still able to return to taxpayers $1.162 million before adjustments from the DRA. So it's a very good number, and I'm glad that we were able to accomplish really all of those fiscal, I won't say goals, but favorable returns to town, to our schools, and to the district. So well done. Just wanted to share that.
Great.
That's great.
Thank you.
Have we already communicated that to the town?
No, we do it in a more formal way through
Yep.
forms.
I don't know if we've already done the formal route to,
Yeah.
the board. Okay. All right. 1.162 million. Thank you. All right. So yes, we will be going into non-public. Be looking for a motion in a moment, but I do not believe we'll be doing a vote in non-public.
Thank you.
So I don't, anybody that's tuning in at home, pretty much you can sign off, because when we come out, it'll be just, most likely, just adjourning. So I'll be looking for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2, under A and L.
So moved.
All right, motion by Caitlin, second.
Second.
Second by Aaron. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Sure.
Mr. Giard? Yes. Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. The time is 8:33.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we are coming out of non-public. We actually do have a couple votes based on discussions. So first vote, we'll talk about the non-public meeting minutes, or,
Yep. I'd like to make a motion to seal the non-public minutes for the reason of divulgence would likely affect adversely the reputation of someone other than a member of the board.
Second.
so would you take the roll call?
Mr. Giard? Yes. Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor?
All right. And then I would like to make a motion to adopt the Hampstead School District 403B retirement plan restated as of September 14th, 2021.
Second.
And just for, I think, a little bit of discussion for the public, just for those, this is a plan that lapsed for a couple of months while we transitioned into the new SAU, and that's why we are restating it. And so it's essentially the same plan, just a little lapse period to cover the administration and teachers and staff. So, yes, Melissa, if you want to take the roll call.
Would the board just prefer to vote by hand on this one?
I think so. Sure.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
I'll take-
Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Melissa. And so then we'll look to adjourn at 9:17 on September 14th, 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.